without further ado, I'd like to welcome Anthony Shannon, Amanda Jones, and Claire Edmonds, and to present to us on the service specs for the community playgroups and supported playgroups for post-July 2025. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about the supported playgroup work that we've been doing under the Targeted Early Intervention Program specifications. Before we start, I'd just like to acknowledge country as well. I'm coming to you from Wongal country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to our Aboriginal colleagues here today. Look, this work is really an opportunity to hear from you around some of the proposals we've put forward in the program specifications around supported playgroups and community playgroups. This is a genuine consultation. We really are interested in your thoughts around this journey we've really been on together around delivering more evidence-informed practice through the Targeted Early Intervention Program. We know through a lot of the evidence work that we've done together with you over the last couple of years that there's a tremendous amount of really good practice being delivered in the program. We've pulled together a lot of the research evidence across the program and made sure that's available to the sector through our evidence portal and our program specifications. And particularly in this part of the program, the supported playgroups and community playgroups part of the program, we really want to, see whether we are able to do more of what works in terms of supported playgroups that deliver really good outcomes for families. We know that, particularly in the supported playgroup space, there is a significant amount of evidence around, what works. And our proposal today, which Claire and Amanda will go through, which is in the program specs, is really about looking to drive more of that evidence into the program. But, we do want to hear from you. This is an opportunity, not just today, but over the next month or so for your feedback around the specs. So we really encourage you to have a look at the evidence review that's available. It's actually not that long. Have a look at the 5 models that we're proposing. Think about the way that your service runs, what your capability and skill level is, and or support you may need, and really give us some informed feedback around whether you think what we're proposing will work or not. And we will gather all that information together at the end of this process and then come back to you with a way forward. But just to let you know, this is not we're not presenting this as a fait accompli. It is a consultation. So if there's certain models you think are more beneficial than others, or certain models you think you might be interested in running than others, again, let us know. And particularly if you are delivering any of these 5 models, these supported playgroup models, we'd also like to hear from you around your thoughts around how they run, the cost of delivering them, whether you think they're sustainable, how any kind of difficulties or challenges that you had in moving to, deliver them as well. So I'll hand you over to Claire and Amanda to run through the information, but just wanted to, paint that bigger picture context for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Claire Edmonds. I'm the Manager of Evidence and Strategy in the Early Intervention Directorate, and I'm coming to you today from Barramadigal land. So as Anthony said, we are in this consultation phase, and we're really keen to talk to you about what you think about what we're proposing. So what you'll see on the next few slides is a little bit of information about to answer some of the questions that we know have come up for you already when it comes to supported playgroups. And one of those is around what's the difference between a supported playgroup and what we're calling a community playgroup or a more regular playgroup. And so these next couple of slides attempt to propose a definition around that to give us a distinction between those two things. So you can see on the screen, starting with community playgroups, these are informal gatherings where parents, together with their young children, their babies, toddlers and preschool age children, come together to learn through play and connect with one another. And these groups can be run by a worker, a TEI worker, for example, or it could be a volunteer and can be self-managed as well. Where they also are generally aimed at all families. Supported playgroups, by contrast, again, an opportunity for parents and caregivers to share experiences of parenting and learn new parenting skills while being supported by workers who coordinate the activities. They also provide children with an opportunity to socialise, play and learn in a structured and positive environment, as well as participating in age-appropriate learning experiences and activities to become school ready. Supported playgroups are facilitated by a professional and qualified worker and are more targeted service model for families with particular needs or vulnerabilities. So just on this next slide, we've kind of provided a little bit of a summary side by side of what the differences are as we see them. And first up, I'll just mention, as you can see at the very top of this slide, we're saying both supported playgroups and community playgroups have a place in the targeted early intervention program, and both types are valuable in and of themselves and as I said, play a role in the program. So starting with community playgroups, these can be facilitated by a worker, like I said, with no formal qualifications required, or it could be run by a volunteer. They're often used as a sort of soft entry point to increase engagement and build trust with clients. These are delivered under community strengthening, and they're recorded as social participation in that service type. That could be both individual and unidentified clients. Service providers delivering a community playgroup are not required to select a model from the evidence that we've circulated and made public. So that's not a requirement when it comes to community playgroups. And the expected outcomes of community playgroups sort of sit in the social and community outcomes domain, and they might include things like increased sense of belonging to community, increased client connection, and supportive relationships. Generally, they're kind of open to anyone to attend, including a kind of drop-in type model. When it comes to supported playgroups, these must be facilitated by a worker with appropriate qualifications, a qualified practitioner. They're delivered under wellbeing and safety and recorded in either supported playgroup or Indigenous supported playgroup service type index. Generally, we'd expect that these are all recorded index as individual clients, even if they choose not to be identified, would still be an individual client on DEX. Service providers delivering supported playgroups, we're asking you, if that's you, to select from one of the models that we've made available in the supported playgroups evidence scan. And as Anthony mentioned, we're really keen to hear what your thoughts are around this, what that will mean for you in practice, and have a good discussion today about that. Expected outcomes in supported playgroups are around safety, social and community outcome domains. So it could be things like reduced risks of entry into the child protection system, increased sense of belonging to community, increased client connection to supportive relationships. In the TEI program, neither the TEI program, that's us, nor the evidence is prescriptive of group size, but the resources that you'll find connected to the evidence scan do have some really good kind of questions or considerations that you could explore to help you determine the most optimal group size for a supported playgroup. Just onto the next slide to call out the exception to this, and that is Aboriginal community-controlled organisations and non-Aboriginal community-controlled organisations with Aboriginal staff delivering supported playgroups to Aboriginal families are not expected to select from the list of models in the supported playgroups evidence scan. These supported playgroup models should be locally designed, leaning on input from community and practitioner expertise and any available evidence. And there was a little bit of evidence in the evidence scan you would have seen around some Aboriginal supported playgroup models. So that's kind of what we're referring to there where we say evidence. But there's also the Aboriginal-led early supports evidence review on our portal. That provides the 8 common themes for effective practice in Aboriginal-led early support programs. So there is some evidence out there for people to consider. So what we've done is kind of put the things I just talked about into a bit of a fictional example, and it is fictional, hoping that this kind of spells it out a little bit more. So I'll talk this through. In Northern New South Wales, the Sunnyside Community Centre provides a community playgroup each week in their local centre. It's open to all parents and caregivers in their area, and often clients just drop in. They have anywhere between 5 and 20 parents attend. The centre tries to record as many individuals as it can on decks, but some clients are entered as unidentified. Data is recorded under the program activity community strengthening and the service type social participation. At the playgroup, children have the opportunity for creative and unstructured learning through play. Parents and caregivers benefit from meeting, connecting with one another. The centre uses the playgroup as a softer entry point. They can provide information to parents about other local services and supports, for example. The playgroup is run by one of the Sunnyside workers with the help of a parent volunteer. They reflect this in their program logic as social participation, and outcomes include increased sense of belonging to community and increases in formal and informal networks. Through effective engagement and building trust with the parents in the group who attend, the staff at Sunnyside identify some clients who are experiencing additional levels of vulnerability and suggest that they attend the Sunnyside supported playgroup that starts next term. So on the next slide, we go into the supported playgroups model. So the team consider the models in the evidence, their local context, and the needs of the clients when selecting a playgroup model to deliver. They choose parent, child, mother, goose from the supported playgroups evidence scan because it matches their target group and the needs of that target group. And their qualified practitioner is trained in the model. In consultation with the local primary school, they've identified that school readiness is a really big issue in their area. So they partnered with the school to deliver the supported playgroup in the school. And this will help support transition to school and foster a sense of belonging with the school community. Through the supported playgroup, they are aiming to improve child safety, reduce risk of entry into the child protection system, and increase parental connection and supportive relationships. The evidence also outlines a range of other benefits for children, including improved language, cognition, behaviour, socialisation, and of course, transition to school. And this is reflected in their program logic. In planning the group, they consider the key questions for designing and delivering a supported playgroup and also the best practice principles, which are in the evidence scan. This includes the size of the group. They consider the size and space of the venue that they have at the school or the room they have at the school, the group dynamics, the client needs, and decide that a group of 8 parents is optimal for what they're trying to deliver. Staff capture individual client data and record this in decks under wellbeing and safety, program activity, and supported playgroups is the service type. So that was just to give you a bit of an outline about kind of how we're seeking to define this. And up on the screen, you'll see some of the questions that you've already kind of put forward to us. The first is, what's the difference between community and supported playgroups? So hopefully we've tried to answer that. What are the expected numbers at supported playgroups versus community playgroups? We've also had a go at answering that. I might just pause there and see if anyone has a question, or Fams, if there's something that you wanted us to clarify a bit or spend some more time on.
Thank you, Claire. I think we're going to have quite a few questions. We're hoping that people will have put them into the Mentee slide, which we'll pull up in a minute. Looking at some of the questions you've answered, one of the questions that's important is, if an organisation recommissions for a supported playgroup, is there a time frame where DCJ would expect that supported playgroup to go? Is it from the first signature of the contract, or is there a time frame that training can commence at the beginning of the contract and then roll it out? What's the expectation in terms of preparation for commissioning?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, Susan. Anthony, do you have a view on that one?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think it's probably something you negotiate when you negotiate your contract. I think, we understand if we're moving to, if we end up moving to this model and introducing these, 5 supported playgroup models, that there will be some organisations that need to train staff. That's understandable. That may take some time. So I think, we're aware of that, and you just negotiate that, you know, when the time comes for contract negotiation. So certainly we're open to that.
Thank you. We're going to move into, because I'm conscious of time, we're going to move into facilitated questions, and I'm going to now hand over to Lauren, our Sector Engagement Manager, to manage that process. So over to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much. I'm just giving folks a few seconds to start popping their questions into Menti, but I can see that there's a couple here. So I'll put this to anyone from the DCJ team who wish to start it. The first one is the department going to assist services to access and pay for facilitated training? When looking to it, the training is not in New South Wales or expensive.
I'm happy. Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you go. You go first, Claire.
We'll share this one. Yeah, look, thanks for that question. We know that there's been some kind of concerns raised about training and costs. We were actually pulling together a little bit of a resource that goes through each of the models in the supported playgroup evidence scan. We started that work and gives a bit more information about training availability, how to access it, and also the costs. That work so far for us hasn't kind of brought up a particularly high cost. That might be different if it were a US model where you needed the facilitator to come to Australia to deliver it. But the ones that we've kind of explored haven't come up as particularly high on the cost rating anyway. And as I said, we're very happy to share that when we've made it available. But I'll pass over to Anthony to finish off the rest of that question.
Yeah, look, I was just a couple of things to comment on. Look, we're certainly interested if there's perceived costs that you're aware of, certainly either let Fams know or let us know, or even put it in the chat. But like that resource, for example, that Claire is kind of indicating we're pulling together, you know, the initial kind of information we're gathering, you know, looks at something like the Parent, Child and Mother Goose program, for example. Level 1 training, $450 online, approximately $600 face-to-face. You know, some other online training for some of the other models talks about $850 for the first practitioner, $650 for the second, $500 for the third. Look, they are costs, and we know that will have an impact on providers, but they're certainly not thousands of dollars. But, you know, again, if you have some other information, please let us know. We do want to understand the costs once we pull our information together and provide it to you and hear back from you around what you've found around costs. Look, we do want to come back to you and have another conversation around, you know, what that means for the sector around training as well. So once we've got all the feedback in, you know, we will come back to you and talk to you about kind of what opportunities there might be to kind of offset some of that.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is really about using a mix of models. So if you're in a service, can you actually use a mix of models to be able to engage your different playgroups?
Yeah, I'll say something about that. I think look, I think this kind of whole kind of journey we've been on around evidence-informed practice, you know, is a really worthwhile journey, and it kind of really kind of asks us to kind of think and kind of analyse a range of kind of, you know, evidence around our program, look at the research evidence, practitioner expertise, the way that, you know, people in this room are delivering services, and also hearing back from clients and ensuring that that voice of clients is part of the mix as well. And a lot of the work we've done around our evidence reviews talks about core components, and you'll see our Preventing Child Maltreatment Evidence Review, which we've used, you know, wellbeing and safety stream, you know, in service models like the family capacity building, kind of, you know, really talk to that core components, being able to kind of adapt and be flexible and use the evidence in a way that meets your client cohort. In this particular service type, supported playgroups, there is, you know, very what appears to be low cost and really evidence-based models that really do deliver outcomes. And there has been a significant level of rigor in terms of evaluation of these models. And in that space, it really kind of, if you're delivering an evidence-based program, it really kind of talks to the rigor and the fidelity in which you deliver it. So under that approach, you really wouldn't be mixing the models, because in effect, then you're not really delivering an evidence-based program. You're delivering a more a program that's using components of different models. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different approach. So in what we're proposing is that, we're putting forward 5 models. We're suggesting that these are the 5 models that should be delivered. We really probably would be looking for your feedback around whether you think you can deliver those one or more of those models with the fidelity in which the program kind of requires you to do it. So that's the kind of analysis that we're asking you to think about, whether that's a kind of a service delivery model that you think you can do, and what are the implications of that.
I think with that question, there also there's a couple of questions that are seeming to explore this same thing, where what I'm understanding is that people are wanting to know, could they run 2 different models concurrently? Could they have 2 different groups that could be going at the same time?
Absolutely. Somebody might be running, they might be running small talk, and then, a couple of weeks later, they might run a kids in transition to school model. That's perfectly fine. Like, or more. You could deliver one or more of the models.
Right. Okay. Thank you. In terms of record keeping for fidelity of programs, this can often be cumbersome and additional to the DCJ requirements. Will this be funded in terms of that sort of admin IT system response, or is there some sort of flexibility around where, if you're delivering the content and you're reporting into DEX as per your contracting requirements, is that going to be adequate?
Well, we have DEX, and that's the program reporting requirement for all services. That's what we've had in place, and we're going to continue to use DEX. So that's all you'll need to do to report to us is fill in data on DEX. Organisations themselves have, their own kind of online client systems. That's really up to you. But for our purposes, all we really need you to do is complete DEX.
Great, thank you. Is there a preferred ratio for supported playgroups in terms of parent to facilitator in similar to early childhood?
I might ask Claire or Amanda, do we know whether those 5 models, I'm not sure off the top of my head whether they're prescriptive in that way or not.
Yeah, I don't know all of the detail off the top of my head either. Happy to kind of take that on notice. I think Diana might be here from Faxia. I don't know if you can hear us, Diana, or if you're online, if you remember any of that in your...
Yeah, we didn't really specifically look at that, but they talked about the numbers or the ratio sort of between 8 and 15 families. I think there was a question further whether for children or families. I think
you're badly, Diana.
But in terms of...
Yeah, a bit of static coming through or something there, Diana. So how about we get back to you guys on that one? We'll come back with a more informed answer.
Yeah.
Might be better.
Yeah.
Thanks, Diana.
But certainly, I also encourage you. I mean, the 5 models, there's plenty of information online about them. I mean, go online, have a look at the models. There's plenty of, really good information around delivery of them. If that information, if there's a requirement, I'm sure it's, outlined in the information that's available.
Right. The next one is around fidelity of programs, and they usually require certification. What are going to be the ongoing, where there's often an ongoing cost in terms of keeping that current, and also in terms of when a practitioner might move on? Is there going to be any sort of auditing processes to ensure that people are keeping to the current model that they've identified in their service contracts?
Well, so it's Anthony, I'll answer that question. I think when we sit down to negotiate your contract with you, we'll, agree with you if you're delivering a supported playgroup. Whether we agree to, include the name of the model you're delivering or not, I think is a question. We haven't really thought that far into the contracting process. But certainly we won't be auditing you on the model you're delivering. I guess we'd really, that's something that probably we'd ask you to kind of, I guess, ensure that if you're delivering a supported playgroup in a certain model, and you've got in place the kind of right support kind of mechanisms within your organisation to ensure that it's being delivered, but we won't be kind of auditing. I mean, we don't really audit organisations on the other models of service delivery.
I'm noticing that a lot of our conversation so far is really focusing on the supported playgroup aspect of this. So, and I just want to flag for everyone on the call that we are having a special session with Baxia in a couple of weeks, which I'll talk to as well. So if we kind of move through some of these more specific supported playgroup questions, that might be because we can hold them over to that next one. But this particular question is asking about, you know, that the workforce is saying that they don't like to deliver these programs as much if it's their only role, and potentially some challenges around staffing. So is that something that DCJ has been considering to date?
Look, that's really good feedback. I think if that's kind of a consideration you're hearing around implementation, certainly provide that feedback, give us some more detail around that. It's certainly good feedback for us to consider.
In terms of consultation, about possibly running them on site at schools with multiple TEI services in one area, could they potentially be inundated? Schools have a reputation of cancelling. So I guess that's probably a tricky one for DCJ to respond to directly, because it really is about that local relationships. But is there anything that you could share around the way that could be negotiated or how that could be supported?
Well, there's nothing really in the kind of what we're proposing that's kind of different to the way that, around negotiating what's being delivered with schools now. I mean, I kind of think that's a conversation you'd have with the school and with your local DCJ commissioning and planning staff around ensuring you're not kind of, duplicating models in the same area and or working closely with schools if you have that, working relationship and partnership approach with them.
Yeah, and I think we put the example of outreach into a school or doing it in a school because there was some a bit of that narrative through the evidence. So just kind of highlighting it as a possible way of delivering a service. So it's not meant to be prescriptive in any way. It was just drawing on a bit of maybe a real life example, but yeah, you'll make that decision based on your local area and needs and the relationships that you have.
Yep.
This is an interesting one in terms of that role modelling component that really happens quite a bit in playgroups. So this person's popped in that they often have families where they want to refer because of the potential benefits for them. That's really kind of targeted support. But they also accept self-referrals because they find that role modelling aspect is really important. So has there been any thinking around this about how we actually support having that role modelling within diverse parts of community within the same group?
Look, I think we probably want to hear from this organisation around their experience of that. I think, the practitioner knowledge and expertise that you have from, working in that kind of way would be really helpful for us to hear about. So we'd certainly be interested in hearing about that feedback.
Yeah, so whoever popped that question in, that would be great. If you want to get in touch with me, maybe we can talk about pulling together a bit of a case study about what you're noticing and how that's been working for you, that we can be feeding that back to DCJ and considering it in the supported playgroup network as well.
And I might just throw in as well, the evidence has a link to a couple of resources around guides to actually delivering. And one of those, the focus in that resource is around group dynamics and the considerations and what you need to think about, so that it may be that there's something in there that's useful to consider when thinking about that aspect.
So this one's a non-ACCO who's delivering a Mums and Bubs group funded under Indigenous social participation in community connections. Should that, given the kind of descriptions you've had today, be shifted over to being a supported playgroup when they're recommissioning?
Well, Indigenous social participation, yes, tends to be more kind of delivered by ACCOs, service type that's kind of completed by ACCOs, but not exclusively. I guess, look, it's really a question, once we've landed the service specifications and you sit down with your, district commissioning planning officers to negotiate your contract and actually look at what you're doing. If you're looking to deliver one of these 5 supported playgroup models. If that's where we end up, then that would be us, you know, in the supported playgroup service type. But if it's not, then yes, you know, community playgroups are delivered, as Claire kind of indicated, under social participation in the community wellbeing and safety stream. It's really kind of question I think we can't really answer today until you know we land, you know, what the framework is and you kind of negotiate your contract with your
I think we've probably got one more question, one or two more questions. So if services are running a supported playgroup that meets the 9 best practice principles, can they continue running the playgroup as it is? So I guess that's the question around, do they have to choose a particular evidence-based model, or can they run it as is under a supported playgroup, acknowledging that it's meeting these practice principles?
Well, this is really the core, you know, one of the core things around this consultation process. So yes, we're interested in hearing from you around if you think that delivering your model within the 9 best practice principles is a better approach than delivering one of the 5 models. We certainly want to hear that feedback from you. I mean, this is the kind of, you know, these are the type of questions really that kind of go to the heart of this consultation process. Like I said at the start, we haven't, you know, finalised this approach. It's a proposal, and we want to hear from the sector around whether they think this is implementable, whether it's going to be better than what we're delivering now, or whether it's, you know, able to be delivered in the funding that we've got. So certainly let us know whether you think that's a better approach than you know, than doing one of the 5 models.
Can
and
I
why.
just unpack that a little bit more, Anthony? So I guess where people might be thinking, and what I've sort of heard from on consultation, is that they're wanting to understand the background thinking about why is DCJ kind of looking to deliver or have services deliver specific evidence-based models rather than delivering something that is an evidence-informed model that meets these practice principles. What's kind of been the background thinking about that in terms of moving into this new phase of commissioning?
So the kind of the thinking behind that is, you know, our move towards evidence-informed practice across the TI program is really predicated on ensuring that we're delivering models of service delivery that are going to deliver the best outcomes for the people that that are being supported in the program. And, you know, there's a mix of evidence that research evidence, practitioner expertise, and client voice that kind of go into, you know, the design and delivery of those programs. There's some parts of the TI program where there's a significant body of research evidence, you know, that's had rigorous evaluation, rigorous testing, which has been demonstrated to improve outcomes for certain client cohorts. And so we want to make sure that more of that evidence is being delivered in the program. And in this supported playgroup part of the program, you know, there is a body of evidence that has, you know, been evaluated and tested that kind of indicates that when you deliver certain models with, you know, fidelity to, you know, with certain client cohorts, that has been demonstrated to deliver good outcomes. And so I guess the question that we're really posing is this a better way to go in our program to be delivering some more of these evidence-based programs in the supported playgroup space, as opposed to the approach that we have now? So that's really kind of the, you know, the underlying principle of this. It's not dissimilar to, you know, the whole of the evidence-informed kind of project we've had across TI around wanting to, you know, deliver more evidence in the program. You know, where it's available, let's use it. But, you know, we want to hear from people around whether it's able to be delivered within obviously the funding envelopes that we have and within the kind of context that we have, because we know a lot of the evidence, you know, is not necessarily is from overseas. It doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work here. It just means it has been tested here. But in some cases, some of that evidence is not, you know, fit for purpose. And so in other parts of the program, we've used the core components approach. But in this part of the program, we're proposing, you know, a bit more of a evidence-based approach with kind of fidelity to these 5 models. That's the kind of underlying rationale.
Right. I think we do have time for one more question, so I'll just check this one we haven't already answered. So the models are narrow and specific, which is usually why evidence is easier to track. How will we manage family risk and support that supported playgroups often provide but won't actually fit you in that? And this is something that came up yesterday when we had our first managers meeting for this small talk training that's coming up in August, where managers were identifying that there's a place in a supported playgroup time within a given day. So it's like an hour and a half. You might be able to do some work up top or towards the end of this particular model. But often family risk that they are supporting is much broader than what the kind of key outcomes of that particular program might be. How do you see that kind of fitting within this, if the timing and the time frame within being able to run a playgroup on any given day takes away from that more responsive support for families?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think we'd probably want to hear from practitioners around how they kind of manage situations like that now. I mean, we do have people now running supported playgroups who arguably probably experience the same type of situation. And, you know, people manage that now. So I think feedback from providers is probably really the answer that we'd want to hear from. I mean, you know, we don't have, you know, we're not manned. You know, the models are kind of the models of service delivery, but, you know, as the kind of questioner points out, you know, people come to support a playgroup for the whole kind of range of complexities and issues that don't fit within a supported playgroup, like they don't fit within a supported playgroup now. And organisations that are just delivering supported playgroups arguably are dealing with these issues already now. So it's kind of not necessarily kind of introducing a more restrictive framework to how people are supported. It's just being more prescriptive around what you do within the supported playgroup that's being delivered.
All right. Thank you so much. I think what we might do is just spend the last little bit of today unpacking a bit of the questions that we have around, you know, what's actually happening out there already that can then help inform the next conversation. So if you're still on your Menti, that would be great, because I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions now, which I'll get to you to pop in. So the first one, we're really keen to check in under which stream your playgroup is currently funded. So are you currently funded under community strengthening? Gosh, it moves quick, doesn't it? Are you funded under safety wellbeing? So as many as you can, it'd be great just to sort of get a bit of a snapshot of who's in the room of the 100-odd people that are on the call today, about where you're actually funded. And I think that, you know, I can see that we've still got quite a few more questions to answer for DCJ. So what I'm going to do is take the questions that you've already put into Menti today and coordinate them and get them over to DCJ. And we can start to further unpack that, especially particularly with regards to the supported playgroup questions, which I think is bringing up a lot of wonderings by the sector. What will this look like in terms of implementation? How will this kind of look in reality? How might it impact the way that both our staff and our community receive that particular program? So it looks to me so far that just from a very brief snapshot here, we have probably a little bit more in the safety wellbeing stream. So that's probably what's driving a lot of these questions, is that for a huge chunk of providers, it's actually the supported playgroup folks that are here today and potentially being funded to provide those specific programs. So that's really helpful. The next question that I'm wanting to hear from folks about is your organisation already delivering one of the 5 identified programs? One thing I'd be really keen to talk through in our supported playgroup network is, what are your experiences of providing those playgroups? What has it been like, and how long ago did you adopt that particular program? Because we know that often it takes a bit of time for facilitators to get comfortable with it, to really find their flow with a particular program. So it'd be really great to kind of be able to lean into your experience and unpack that potentially in our next session as well. So far it looks like we've got a little bit of connection with some of these programs, but broadly speaking, it sounds like people have been running their own particular program. So I'd be really keen to hear from people, what has been informing your program service design previously? Have you already been looking at some of those evidence principles to be able to create that program? What has been the driver of using your own developed program versus something that's been off the shelf? So again, this would be some really great conversations for our supported playgroup network in a couple of weeks' time.
Sorry to interrupt there, Lauren. Just a quick question. I think with the question, it'd be interesting to know of these, like in the last slide, it was like 22 people doing wellbeing and safety. So obviously they're the ones that are kind of potentially impacted by this move. So, you know, of the 40, like some of those might be community strengthening, which are not impacted. So, yeah, be helpful to kind of understand.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's a really good point. So I'll see if I can unpack that for you when we catch up with the broader network. The final question that I'm wanting to hear from folks today is, if you're a community playgroup provider, so you aren't looking to commission for a supported playgroup, we have been setting up we've in the very early stages of getting our supported playgroup network up and running. But what we found is that, you know, there's some really specific questions that are around how do you deliver supported playgroups, and how do you kind of implement those evidence-based programs. But the other questions that have been coming up have been quite general. They've been things like, you know, how do you connect with families? How do you promote your program? What are some creative ways to set up your room and your space so it is inclusive? How do you make sure that you can, you know, do a whole range of interesting activities within your playgroup that meet the needs of different kids, but are also not too expensive, able to be run in a park, you know, these sort of things. So what here at Fams we're really curious to find out is, would you be interested in being in a community playgroup network? Now, this might be that we actually run some sessions with both supported and community playgroups together. This might be that we actually partner with other organisations who are running community playgroups as well, and like really leverage that broader wisdom. It might be that we do some sessions through the year where we actually get guest speakers in who can speak to specific issues as well. So just wanting to kind of pulse check, if you're a community playgroup provider, would you be interested in attending a community playgroup network? And Anthony, can you remember how many we had already that said that they were running community playgroups? Is that a resounding yes, that folks are pretty keen at this stage?
Yeah, I think it was 18 in the other slide you had up, 18 and 22.
Now we've got 23. It's just growing by the minute. Okay, so this is really great for us. We'll sort of spend some time thinking about what that could look like, and get back to the sector about responding to that interest as well. Just to finish up, in terms of next steps, thank you so much everyone for coming along today. We are really keen to support the sector in having broader conversations about this consultation so that they can provide their own direct feedback to DCJ. We'll also be supporting, we'll also be really listening and being able to share back to DCJ what we're hearing as a peak. So we've got our next supported playgroup network session coming up on Monday, the 19th of August at 11 o'clock. So if you are a supported playgroup provider, or you're a community playgroup provider who's actually really interested in delivering a supported playgroup, we've got our colleagues from FAXIA joining us for that particular session, and they're going to actually go through the different models and the evidence that was identified and were the reasons that those particular models were identified and chosen for this commissioning process. So if you're not already part of the playgroup, I will drop in the chat how you can get connected in with that one as well. Or Cass, if you've got that accessible, you just do that for me, that'd be excellent. And we'd love to have you there. The first part will be the presentation from FAXIA, and the second half will be about us actually having some sector colleague conversations about really unpacking some of the things that you've got in terms of concerns, challenges, but also opportunities as well. That because I think what's kind of exciting about this idea of moving towards really differentiating it between these two playgroup types is that we're going to be able to, in our evidence, look at what apples are apples and oranges are oranges, rather than kind of blending those two evidence bases. So that would be great if you can make that along to that one. And finally, Fams is going to collate all of your questions and forward them to DCJ. If you, for whatever reason, Menti wasn't working for you, you have more questions, you jump off this call and make a cup of tea and suddenly go, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that, or speak to your colleague and go, what about this? Please just email us directly, and we will add that to that collated document so that we can make sure that all of your questions are answered, and that you feel like you're really well informed to be able to provide that feedback to DCJ about through this consultation process. So please don't hesitate, give me a shout, happy to chat to people and support you through this process as we move to the next stages of commissioning.
Thanks, Lauren. And I join you in thanking everyone for being here today. And special thanks to Anthony and Amanda and Claire for giving us that presentation. And as Lauren said, we're on the journey with you, and we look forward to working alongside you in this consultation for community playgroups and supported playgroups. So watch this space and make sure you're signed up to our weekly wrap for further information. Thanks very much.